up, guys? We're back with another reaction video.
Yes, we are.
What are we doing?
So we're gonna do Disturbed, their cover of The Sound of Silence.
I know this.
Okay.
Yes.
So for anyone who doesn't know, this is a cover of The Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. That's Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel. It was written in 1964. And what I find most interesting is that I actually think the lyrics holds true today and actually pertain to today more than they did to 1964.
So yeah, I will say I do know this. I've heard this a couple times.
Okay.
We've had a discussion before. I love cover songs, but I always give the original more, I don't know,
Credit?
credit because they were the original. They wrote it typically, but they also performed it. So I do view them as separate songs, even though it's the exact same song. Like I get different things from this version from what I remember from the original.
Yeah, so to me, they obviously all have the same lyrics, similar music. They are very different from one another in the way that they're sung and the way that they're played. I think Disturbed just kills it. It's amazing.
So from what I remember, Disturbed's version, it's like a constant crescendo, like throughout the song, where he's getting more powerful.
Yes.
Whereas, and it's beautiful. I find Simon and Garfunkel's version to be more haunting, like in a beautiful, haunting way.
I take Disturbed. David Draymond's voice is more haunting.
All right. So let's
I
do
I
this.
just think it's incredible.
Yeah, no.
Their cover is incredible.
Yes.
I think it's better than the original. Okay. So don't forget to like and subscribe, follow us on all social media channels, links in the description below, and let's go.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound.
I'm sorry, this is ruining it, but our dog is literally like whining at a toy right now.
Yes.
Sorry guys. Okay, let's.
Let me grab it.
But yeah, it's good that I paused it there because I'm literally like getting emotional. Like his voice is so good. Like his
Yeah.
voice is that good.
No, it is very good. It's it's awesome, his voice.
It's amazing.
I consider it a different thing than the original, though.
Okay.
Of silence, in restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp, I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence.
Okay. So, okay. Going over the lyrics, obviously, I'm discussing it from the perspective of Simon and Garfunkel because they wrote the song.
Yeah.
Why isn't it showing me? That's weird. So it starts off, "Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again." So he's going like back into like his like dark, like the darkness within himself. Like I've seen people think that it's like he's just like going and like seeking out like darkness and like sad things, but I think he's turning it on himself and thinking, turning inward
That's the
to
way
the
I
darkness within himself.
that's the way I interpret it. And he's plagued by depression, darkness to the point that he refers to it as an old friend
Yeah, like
because
he's been
it's
here
so familiar.
before.
Yeah, it's fucking beautiful.
Paul Simon came up with that. So this was written right after the Kennedy assassination,
It's 63 that was.
and Paul Simon like sort of got a little reclusive and then like eventually wrote this song. And Paul Simon's like notorious for saying that he writes his songs without a set or clear cut meaning. Like he'll write a song and then he'll realize the meaning that he
Afterwards.
afterwards, and then he'll decide if he wants to actually keep it or not, depending on like where he was going with that.
Yeah.
But this song really is about the disconnection between people and how people just like are not communicating. And we'll get into that as we go a little deeper. Let's see. Because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. So, like, it came to him in his dream, like disturbing, like dark thoughts.
It seeds while I was sleeping. Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's
crazy.
insane
And the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence.
that he's not talking about it.
It's crazy.
In restless dreams, I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone. Beneath the halo of a street lamp, I turned my collar to the cold and damp. So, alone in all of this, like literally walking by himself, it's cold, damp, and dark.
Hmm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's interesting here. I know, so like the street lamps, the lights, they are sometimes like shaped like halos, but using the word halo is
Yeah,
interesting. You know
it
what I
like
mean?
makes it look the light. Like that was just like one little bit of light still left in there.
And then I turn my collar to the cold and damp. So I'm picturing he's on a cobblestone street. It's night. It's rainy and cold, and he's, bundled trying to warm up in this dark, depressing fucking
And you can literally just
dream.
say that like that's him inside of his own head. Like
Yeah.
it's just so dark and depressing in there, but there's just like one little glimmer of like hope and happiness.
Yeah, and he's alone,
Yes,
which
of course.
important.
Those when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. So I think that would be sort of like the beacon of hope, like maybe just like one little ounce of happiness in there.
Yeah, so what I find interesting about this part, so when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light, it's
Or
poetically
it's,
written.
it's waking him up from his dream.
Yeah, so it's poetic, and then it says that split the night, so there's light within the darkness, and then it says and touch the sound of silence. So he's talking about a visual, something he's seeing, and he's saying the light is touching the sound of silence. Do you know what I
So
mean?
this sound of
It's like two
silence is
different.
like the fact that no one's communicating and like no one's talking and there's just a complete lack of like human interaction. So like it seems like that whatever that is, the flash of neon light, whatever that may represent, is what's um allowing for communication.
Yeah, I was just saying it's interesting the two different senses,
Yeah.
sound and sight.
But this
It's
could mean
cool.
so many things. It could
Oh, I
mean
know.
that it's literally the light waking up from his nightmare, his dark dream, or it can be like looking how he said this whole song is about lack of communication within everybody. It could
Hmm.
be like the darkness is where no one is talking, and that little bit of light is where like finally like someone is sharing how they feel with someone else,
It's
and
also
so on and so forth.
No, I agree, and it's also interesting that the light is from a neon light. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's a interesting thing that was the source of the light that broke through the night.
Yeah, like specifically
Yeah,
neon.
like a neon light. I think of, like a store, so some type of
Yeah,
commercial capitalist thing.
like America, like what we've become, what we've changed into. Okay, we were
Yeah,
like
we were
right
right here.
here. Okay.
of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more. People talking without speaking. People hearing without listening. People writing songs and voices never shared. And no one dared disturb the sound of silence. Fool said I, you do not know. Silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you. Take my arms that I might reach you. But my words, like silent raindrops, fell and echoed in the wells of silence. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made. And the sign flashed out its warning, and the words that it was forming. And the sign said the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sound of silence.
That logo makes me laugh with the song.
Oh my God, that literally makes me like cry.
Emotional. Yeah. No, I get it. It's a very powerful song. This version as well. You know what I mean? It's very intense.
His voice is like literally amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, okay. It goes, and in the naked light, I saw 10,000 people, maybe more, people talking without speaking, people hearing without listening. So, my point of how this just is more reflective of today's culture than yesterday's culture is just with social media. We're glued to our phones. We literally walk around and like who says people talking without speaking? Like people are just saying nonsense all day, like on social media to each other. Like what are we even talking about half the time? It's just like gossip or like clothes or just nonsense. Like I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. You at home are guilty of it. Like is anyone really speaking? Is this people hearing without listening? Like how many times do you have a conversation with someone and you're not listening to what they're saying because you're too busy formulating your response
Yeah,
and just not listening at all because we're all glued to our phones.
for sure.
Like we've gotten to be such a self-obsessed and overly like self-conscious um society that just really focuses on self. And it's like why I think that like the lyrics in this song pertain more to today than they did to 1964.
Well, so that's where I got it.
Sorry guys, my dog is
I don't know if they can hear it or not.
they probably can't, but I can't help it. I'm laughing.
So the 60s were fucking crazy. It was,
But
there was fucking
like
bombings.
it's just resonate more to today, in my opinion, the way that I interpret them.
So I agree. And, art, good art transcends time.
Yeah.
So I did just want to go back to so I'm just trying to, in my head, formulate the image that he's painting. So he's alone on the cobblestone street, dark, blah, 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 all that shit. And then his eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. So the light broke through the sound of silence. And then, like the lyrics say, in the naked light, I saw 10,000 people, maybe more, people talking without speaking, people hearing without listening. So, like you were saying, it's very metaphorical for there's all these people and they're not communicating, they're not speaking, and they're not listening, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, people thought that this was in response to everything that happened after Kennedy's assassination. Like, literally, like, the world, the country stopped. Like, it came to a standstill.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay, let's keep going. People writing songs that voices never share, and no one dare disturb the sound of silence. So, writing songs that voices never share could be literal, but it could also be like when you have thoughts, you think about something like that, you're not sharing it, you're not saying it out loud, like you're not just sharing what's going on in your mind, and no one's going to disturb the sound of silence. We're all just going to continue not communicating with each other.
I agree. That's how I interpret that as well.
Yeah.
People do have these thoughts and maybe they are actually putting it into songs, but people are afraid to speak and they don't want to be the one to stick their neck out and disturb the sound of silence to.
Yeah, and just keep like going around like drones, just
Yep.
really doing it,
So
not
also
really saying.
so this, I mean, Kennedy, so we had shit going on with the Soviet Union, and it's interesting because I believe he's talking about America, but I'm
Yeah, it's
I'm
about
I'm
America.
picturing the I don't know if because you said Kennedy, I'm thinking of the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Soviet Union, and I'm picturing the communist, USSR. But it's funny because it applied to America then, it applies to America now, but for some reason that imagery is making me think of.
But it is art again, like we always say, that even though there is a clear-cut meaning, it's still always going to be left up to interpretation.
Yeah.
So like you're not wrong with that. Then he goes, "Fools," said I, "you do not know. Silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you. Take my arms that I might reach you. But my words like silent raindrops fell." So like that reminds me. Um, Paul Simon was saying how like even like people, like religious people, people in the media, like celebrities, they were all like going out and like trying to get people to communicate and to share how they're feeling and to just like be more like one with like society and things like that, and how like no one was really listening. It wasn't making a dent, it wasn't making a change. And that's kind of like here saying like just going out and explaining why it's so bad that like people aren't communicating and like no one's listening.
Yeah. So I find it interesting that so he's technically a part of it, but the song is written from him observing. So he's in the darkness. He's part of it, but he's observing what's going on in the light here. And
Yeah.
he's calling them fools and says, "You do not know silence like a cancer grows." So, it's bad if you don't open your mouth. The shit just gets worse and worse. Hear my words that I might teach you, take my arms that I might reach you. So,
Which is like something that like a religious, like I could imagine like a priest saying.
yeah, no, that that particular hear my words that I might teach you, take my arms that I might reach you, that to me invokes very religious, like Jesus, even like
Yeah.
something he would say. So hear my words and let's embrace, let's engage. But and then he says,
But
my
it's
words
just
like silent
lost
raindrops
on
fell.
everybody. Yeah.
Interesting that the raindrops were silent.
Yeah.
And then
And echoed in the wells of silence.
so that's fucking crazy. So the raindrops fell silent.
And it's just collecting all of the water. Like it's actually people who are trying to do something to change and to get everyone to communicate and to change like the way that everything is. And it's just not happening. And it's just collecting buckets and buckets of people trying to make a change.
Yeah, so I'm still hung up on the silent raindrops and then echoing in the wells of silence. That's fucking crazy.
And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made, and the sign flashed out its warning and the words that it was forming. So, like, the neon god they made. Like, you can literally take that in many more ways than one, like the neon god. Like, that makes me think of, like, New York City, Las Vegas,
Yeah.
like the cities and just how like the life that we've created where we like just go around, go about our day to day, but we're not really like, are we really like learning anything like substantial, learning anything worthwhile, talking about anything worthwhile?
Yeah, so
You know what I mean?
yeah, so I pick up on like the first time you mentioned the neon sign.
Yeah,
To me, it's invoking images of consumerism
yeah,
and false prophets. Like in the Bible, they have the story of them building a golden idol and worshiping that instead of God.
yeah.
So
That's
this is
literally.
yeah, so this is more religious imagery. I don't believe that Paul Simon's particularly religious. Maybe he is. I don't know.
Well, it just helps to show we're just completely lost touch with our own culture, whatever that may be.
Yeah, so the neon god is, consumerism, all that. And the sign fleshed out its warning and the words that it was forming.
And we'll
So
get into. And the sign said the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls.
the neon sign.
Hmm.
Sorry, she's whining again. Give me one
The
second.
words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls
So to me that
and whispered in the sound of silence. So places that you don't look. Like
so
who really looks at the walls of the subway?
so I interpret that as graffiti.
Oh, right.
So okay, so the people bowed and
But then
prayed.
again, places that you don't really look.
Oh yeah,
Places you don't pay
you
attention
wouldn't
to.
think prophets' words would be there. You know what I
No.
mean?
It's like the last place you would think to look for them.
Yes, Santos.
And that's another way of saying that it's ignored.
Yes, and the words of the prophets are written on the subway halls and walls and tenement halls. So I'm
And what is a
picturing
tenement? Isn't
tenements
that like
like
a living quarters?
yeah, it's like a tenement building. It's typically like it's apartments, but it's typically tenements like
Like lower
projects.
income
Yeah, like
apartments.
projects.
So yeah,
Yeah.
no one's really reading the graffiti or the
So
words on the wall in the subway or
I'm
like in lower income apartment
so
graffiti.
I'm picturing graffiti and I'm also picturing like flyers and like anti-war shit, like posters and stuff. And that's what he's saying. The prophets, that's their messaging written on these things. They're graffiti and I'm picturing, the 60s and there was a lot of protest. There was civil unrest,
Yeah.
civil rights, people were fighting for. So I'm imagining graffiti and I'm picturing these signs and these,
Yeah.
political calls to action.
But I also interpret that as like it's clear that just from the sheer location of all of these messages and the words of the prophet, no one's seeing them. Like they're all busy with their neon signs and away from like the subway walls and the tenement halls. So even though like it's clearly written out, like people just need to stop what they're doing and like focus elsewhere, focus on more like maybe things that could potentially be right in front of them, but like they're not. They're just keeping up with like their own day to day in their own worlds, avoiding like the reality at hand and how to actually like make things better.
Yeah, okay, so I don't know if I'm overthinking this now, but so, and the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made,
Makes
right?
me think of like,
And the sign fleshed out its warning and the words that it was forming. So the neon god, I assume, is the false god, right? That's just where my head went. But then it's saying the neon god and the sign is saying the words of the prophets are written on the subway halls, walls, and tenement halls. So if it's the neon god that's saying it, it's like, should you really be listening to? Maybe I'm like getting too You know?
Okay, so
Do you get
let's
what I'm
look at this
saying?
here. The people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made, and the
Yes.
sign flashed out its, well, no, it might not be, and the sign flashed out its warning and the words that it was for. It's a warning.
Yeah, but he mentioned the neon sign earlier in the verse, and now he's talking about the neon god
Well,
and the
maybe the
sign.
sign is different
It's
from
not the
the neon
same.
god.
Maybe. I don't know. I could just be making this overcomplicated. I think we were on the right track with what we were saying first
Yeah,
before I brought this up, honestly.
but definitely just backpacking on Paul Simon saying that it is about lack of communication between people. It just makes me think that we've just completely shifted our focus into things that don't necessarily or shouldn't necessarily require it. And we're just like associating with one another, but like not really,
Listening.
yeah,
Yeah.
not really just, not really being like a society.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot to discuss with this song. It's very open to interpretation. I usually like to try to explain what the artist says the song is about, just so I can try to see the song from their point of view, and then I try to go in my own point of view. But like this song's definitely a tricky one to unpack.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at this last line here and whispered in the sound of silence. Like,
So yeah,
that's
that means that it's a good message on the subway walls and tenement halls because it's also being whispered in the sound of silence, and the idea is trying to break the sound of silence. But
so if you were to take the literal interpretation, not the metaphorical, when you look at this sentence, what are you imagining? Because I'm there's two different meanings of this sentence.
I know
Literally
exactly what you're talking about, and I've got the other meaning in my head where it's like the sound of silence. Imagine it being more of like a place. You know what I'm saying? Where everything is silent and like there's one person who's like trying to whisper
into the void.
into, yeah.
Okay.
Or
Or
they're
yes, the
silently
whisper is silent.
whispering and it's completely silent and not full.
Yeah, what the fuck? It's I don't know which one it is.
I like
And
my version better.
so it's a much more positive,
Yeah.
speaking.
Like, oh, maybe it'll change and it just cuts out after
It's
that.
like in the earlier verse introducing the light into the darkness, but then is this just speaking, impotently, and it's nothing's gonna happen,
It's
nothing's gonna
just
change
a
because
silent
the
whisper.
whisper is not, you can't hear it.
I don't like that
I
version.
know it's pretty dark.
We'll go with mine, and you guys can let us know what your version is.
Yeah,
But yeah, this song literally like makes me cry. I have trouble listening to it. Like
yeah, it's powerful.
Disturbs and David Draymond do this song so well.
They
I
do.
don't cry listening to the original.
No, no,
No.
I agree. So emotionally, although I get a different emotion here in the original, it's fucking haunting.
Mm,
Their voices, because like the harmonizing that they do, and it's crazy. But yeah, so I think the way he Disturbed, the way he performs this is better. I'll say that.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Like it's hard for me to listen to, like literally like that emotional.
yeah,
Okay. So yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
yes. See ya.